Alright, before we start this video, if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Sean, or you can call me Sean. I study a lot of things, so this is actually from the synchronicity video. I didn't react to it, but I studied it from ThirdEyeTyrone. I've studied and practiced a lot of things. I have my own study and journaling of understanding. I participate in esoterics, astrology, and sometimes I watch VTubers and I study a lot of lessons of God and what God is and what life is and all that good stuff. If you're familiar with my channel, welcome. This is going to be a reaction to Third Eye Tyrone. I have basically become a very big fan of this channel due to the knowledge. And he says it like that. I like the way he says it. Like the way the knowledge is actually taught. It's super easy to consume. That being said, you definitely want to get your notes for this because, bro, Tyrone be spitting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this video started. It's like, sure, it's a reaction, but this is going to be more like a study time, and maybe I'll point out some stuff you guys should be writing down. So take notes. Let's go ahead and get this started, man. This video is going to be very trippy if you're not familiar with this channel. Let's go.
I think that it's pretty fair for me to say within recent history, science and spirituality have sort of fallen into an antagonistic relationship. You could even argue that the Jungian archetype of the warring brothers is at play here. And there is a word, a very controversial word that both unites and divides the two. I don't know if any of you have ever gotten into conflict with your siblings, but your parents still force both of you to sit at the table together. This word is that table, and the word is vibration. Okay. When all is said and done, vibration sits as the linchpin. It appears to be the very foundation of everything that we've come to know and understand. As a matter of fact, what we term as understanding is just the various faces of vibration.
So today's video's topic is going to be vibration. So put that in your notes, vibration. So this is how I like to take the notes. So this is the title of the video, of course, but vibration. This is what we're focused on. I'll point out some stuff that should be written down.
You can just think of these faces as different categories of knowledge itself. To name them, there is information, cycles, patterns, frequency, relationships, connections. I talk about all of these all the time on
all those things could be written down
channel, and I encourage you to visit some of my older videos. I really won't stress them too much in this one. But this is the basic anatomy of understanding, at the very least, the kind of understanding that we possess. I'm sure most of you have already heard of dualism. It's pretty cliche by now. We figured out many moons ago that this is how our perspective operates, but it's more than just our individual perspective. We have discovered via physics that reality itself appears to be held in place by
I would like literally draw this pattern. I won't do it for this video, but later on I'll put this in, and you guys should definitely pause it and write that in.
What they call symmetry, whether it be mystical insight or the scientific method. They both appear to dance around this same unifying principle of some kind of polarity. This principle appears to be the thing that is facilitating reality. But what in the world is it? Why is it this way exactly? After years of investigating this, everything that I hoped wasn't true is becoming more and more plausible by the day. And if there's anything I can tell you, it is this. There are all kinds of strange forces at work, forces that you don't learn about in science class. And speaking of forces, I think that this is a good place to start. This way of being, this polarity, I think that it is the result or the product of some kind of force. And I call this force memory. And I'm not the first person to come to this conclusion. Quite far from it, actually. We can see the notion of a force being responsible for reality quite clearly within Taoism. This is what the
Shout out to
Tao
Taoism.
is, and it
The way.
heavily inspired the concept of the Force from Star Wars, but I digress. And this isn't about being all woo-woo. You know, Taoism sort of has this reputation for being all woo-woo and mystical. This force is very real in the same way that gravity is, as a matter of fact.
For sure.
I compared it to gravity in my previous video and the way that it operates. But before we get to that, we have to quickly cover something very basic that most people tend to not think about. And this is forces themselves. What are they? What exactly is a force? Well, no one really knows. Forces are described as being fundamental. And this word fundamental is just a nerdy way of saying we don't have the ability to understand that. They are self-evident. They just are. For the most part, we can see how these forces operate. We can see what they do, but what they are in and of themselves is completely mysterious. Nature operates in a very particular manner, and by investigating this particularity, we can see that there are these shadowy figures behind the scenes that serve as the mechanism of action for everything in the universe. And these forces are patterns. They are expressed as these consistent patterns, and we are able to conceptualize these patterns and oftentimes even see them via abstraction. We accomplish this through fields. Fields are pretty weird. They are like these abstract maps. They are representations of a dynamic, of some kind of potential interplay, of a cosmic presence or tension. And with all of that in mind, there is a force acting upon us, and I call this force memory. And what this force appears to do is decompress data. For us, vibration...
I'll write that down. Memory decompresses data. Memory decompresses data.
Is the very essence of reality. It is things happening. It is events occurring, the sequence of events. It is the ability to witness, explain, and know. It is language. It is the let there be light at the beginning of scripture. But in actuality, there is one super event that is being decompressed. And this decompression is being facilitated by a force that I call memory. I know that this all sounds a tad bit schizo and out there, but a simple example would be something like this. You can imagine that you have a music album that is on some kind of disc.
1984
the entirety
by Taylor
of
Swift.
That album is
the best album.
All there on the disc. It is all there all at once, suspended in some kind of superposition. But if you actually want to experience the music, you have to put it on the record player and press play. And when you do this, things start happening. It begins to cycle. There is this constant looping over and over. And this cycling is what is facilitating the music being played. And this cycling is what I call memory. And you'll see that the actual act of listening to the music is something akin to decompressing the data. The album goes from being suspended in this sort of superposition-like state, and it becomes localized to a specific state, a specific time. And this is just an analogy, but I think that it's a pretty useful one. And if you found yourself here on my channel and you're still listening to this video, then you can probably clearly see the skeletal framework of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics with the collapse of the wave function. And I don't know how to tell you this, but the many worlds hypothesis is really just a scientific rehashing of something that we have known about for thousands of years. If you want to say that God is a white bearded man out in some heavenly plane or a giant supercomputer in hyperspace,
you're also not
Everyone who sits down and seriously tries to analyze the metaphysics of how reality operates, of what reality is, they all come to this same conclusion. It is always the same basic structure or archetype if you want to view it from a more Jungian perspective, and it is ultimately just a preference.
I would write these down as well. Plato's theory of forms. Like, these are extra resources, so Resources to study. You'll put Plato's theory. Of form. Let me put it like that. You also put, you could put all of these, but personally, you just put whatever. Like the Tree of Kabbalah, I already have that, so that one's already done. I've already done the research on the Tree of Kabbalah. So the Tree of Kabbalah has something to do with also Plato's theory of forms, and then you can just get a third one. Honestly, these all look very interesting. Spinoza's ontology, so I'll study that one. So I'll study those, and then I'll see what lines up in those patterns, because these will all teach the same thing but differently. In Thailand, we like to say same but different. We do like this.
Or Jungian perspective, and it is ultimately just a preference of aesthetics which determines the way that you choose to view it. Obviously, in this modern information age, we view everything through this cybernetic lens. But it's important to realize that we're not talking about anything different from our ancient ancestors. People in ancient history view things through the dominant aesthetics of that time. And when you look at something like the many worlds hypothesis, which claims there are all of these endlessly branching timelines that are determined by these quantum events like the collapse of the wave function, whenever you trace this timeline back, whenever you zoom out far enough, you see that it is ultimately some kind of single quantum object, a singularity, a super event, or super data that is being decompressed into discrete instances. You can easily swap out this singularity with some kind of supercomputer and simulation theory that is simulating all possible possibilities for some unknown reason.
And that's why when people talk about manifestation is literally this, because there is a version of you that has what you say you want. You say you want the car, the money, the girls, the whatever. This already exists through the many worlds. This already is a thing that is happening, and then it's up to you to turn to that vibration to have this appear in the reality that your ego is in now. So we are ego. We don't really exist, but the ego wants to exist. It wants to be its thing. It wants to be its own thing, and we all have this together. We all work off one another. But if you would want something specific to fall into the world that you live in now, you have to tune into whatever that vibration is that gets you to there. And there's many different ways to do that. I'm not going to sit here and teach you that because that's going to take all day. This is just me explaining the manifestation part within the many worlds theories and stuff like this, because at the end of the day, it's all real. It's just all up to you to perceive it as real and believe that it's real, like you believe in whatever it is that you believe in. If you believe I am a black man, well, congratulations, you believe I am a black man. That is part of what belief is. It's something for you to look at as an individual and say, this is what it is to me, because I am not just a black man. Other people would also say I am a foreigner, right? They would also say I am a nerd, right? All of these things can be true, but it's your perception on what you decide is that function or that version of truth for you. For some people, I'm just a man, right? That's how it works.
But if you simply look at the world's oldest religion, Hinduism, and its close cousin Buddhism, you could replace this singularity or this supercomputer with the god Yama, which presides over this thing that we are in, or this plane that we exist in, called samsara. The word samsara means cycles or going in circles. It is, in essence, this force that I call memory. Or if you don't like that aesthetic, you can look at
There's
Gnosticism and
more.
Neoplatonism and replace
Same thing.
Yama or
Same, but
this
different.
supercomputer with the demiurge Yaldabaoth, which is the god that supposedly has us all trapped within fate. But what is fate exactly? Fate is the sequencing of events. It is connections,
Over and over and over again.
relationships, patterns, information, or cycles. The concept that we most commonly associate with fate is time passing. It is the tick-tock of the clock.
Even
And
though
one
it's not
thing that
linear.
all of these models share in common is the inability to escape. We are supposedly trapped within fate. We are supposedly trapped within samsara. All explanations that I've seen of simulation theory seem to suggest that we are trapped inside of the simulation or the matrix,
We
or
are the
however you want to
simulation.
put it. We are trapped inside of all of these varying timelines. Within the whole many worlds interpretation, there is a concept that was gaining some popularity called quantum immortality. And
Yeah.
I was talking with one
I was telling my friend about this too. It's pretty funny. So I'll explain it a little bit because I think Tyrone will make it go crazy. So basically, those near-death experiences you have, say you were like driving down the road and then somebody came out of nowhere and almost hit you. Well, in another world, they did hit you and you died. But since you died, it didn't happen to you because you were still here alive. But everybody else that was in that earth, that other world, that other dimension, witnessed you die. So yes, we die, but the way we perceive death, because where death is, we are not. Death is over here. We will never intersect with death personally because that is ego. We are ego. We will never be with death as we are. Even though we may die, we will never perceive death as it is for ourselves. That's just the easiest way I can explain it for everybody. Now let's hear how Tyrone explains it.
one of my supporters on Locals. I recommend that you all go and support me on Locals. We're going to throw a party over there. But
Oh, W.
he was pretty much
A party.
saying that quantum immortality
Do I get an
is
invite?
reincarnation. They are one and the same.
Yes.
All of these systems.
You are this guy, and you are also this guy, and you are this woman. This guy kills this guy. Yes, you killed yourself, but you never got to experience it. It's crazy, man.
Is
Welcome to life.
reincarnation. They are one and the same. All of these systems
Quantum
present a
immortality.
very similar scenario that occurs at the quote-unquote end of life. With quantum immortality, you are transported to some alternate timeline where you continue to live, where you still live on. Within Gnosticism, you are placed on trial by the demiurge, and if you don't pass, you are thrust back down into fate. Within Hinduism, you are recycled back into samsara.
Welcome back.
Or if you want to be more practical
Respawn,
about
bro.
all of this and just say that energy is conserved in accordance with the laws of physics.
Because it cannot be
all
destroyed.
circles back to this cycling, to this vibration, this polarity. This is samsara. This is the Tao. This is what I
This is
call
all of it.
memory. And I think that there is some kind of force associated with it. And I believe that understanding this force is the most crucial aspect of the human experience. It appears to be the entire reason why we evolved through the primate species. It seems that we have evolved in a special way to where we are able to feel this force acting upon us. It is behind our
The gut
intuition
feeling.
that there is some kind of overarching process that is unfolding. It is why we are able to ask why. It is why philosophy is the oldest discipline. Somewhere along the line, thought and reason began to emerge amongst the monkeys, and the very first product of this phenomenon was the realization of this force. And as I mentioned, it's very similar to gravity in its mechanism of action, in the sense that it is a pulling force, the same way that gravity keeps your physical body attached to the planet. This force keeps your psyche or your consciousness embedded within reality. This is why I call it memory, because this is quite literally the
Works.
function that memory serves. It is where reality is stored for us in
I
our
would
brain.
write that down. I would draw this image, computer memory cell. So I'm just gonna write that down so I can come back to it later. I would draw this. Drawing pictures is very good because words are just words, but pictures hold 1,000 words. So, perfect example. I learned about Orion today. So here is Orion in text, blah 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 blah, versus here is Orion in drawn form. Very interesting indeed. So definitely draw pictures as well. It helps you because this, even if you don't understand it, you can still see it and you can eventually learn it. And when you eventually learn it, you'll have this forever to fully understand.
That memory serves. It is where reality is stored for us in
You
our
could draw
brains.
this too,
It
but that's
is
extra.
what anchors us to reality. I use the example of someone who has Alzheimer's disease all of the time,
That's
that
sad.
without memory, you would just float away. And once again, I am sort of speaking in metaphor here, but I do believe that this principle is literally manifested within nature. This is what nature is. Chemistry, DNA, microbiology, culture, cities, planets, stars, solar systems. It is all memory. It is all this cycling. But the weird thing is, if you look at gravity, for example, it is a pulling or attracting force, and the attractor is mass. We already know about mass. It has this weird property where it influences other mass to come towards it, and we call this gravity. However, the attractor for this force that I'm referring to is completely mysterious. I talk about strange attractors often in many of my previous videos. Within chaos theory, strange attractors are these weird mathematical objects or this odd principle that generates all possible possibilities around them. You could say that they generate all possible interactions or something like that. But whenever you try to model this, it presents as some kind of fractalesque image. There is some kind of fractal phase space or dimension that you are encountering. And if an electromagnetic field looks like this, and a gravitational field looks like this, then this memory field would look something like this. It would be this weird fractalesque recursive type of situation going on.
Always.
This is the alien supercomputer in hyperspace running a recursive algorithm in order to decompress some kind of super data set.
So basically, he said there's this super massive computer created by a super intelligent species to break down and to try and understand life and the big picture within life, because he just said a whole bunch of word salad.
Is all timelines. It is all possible possibilities. It is the Tao. It is samsara and reincarnation, the inability to be lost. It is pure memory. Now, do I think that we literally live inside of a Mandelbrot set? I mean, come on, you have to give me more credit than that. Fractals are just a way of conceptualizing infinity. I believe that that is a direct quote from Mandelbrot himself. This thing that we are in is what we call eternity. It is what we experience as time passing or things happening. It is the ability to witness, explain, and to know. It is knowledge. I talked about this in my previous video with hyperbolic space, hyperbolic geometry, that we are somehow inside of knowledge. I like to use the word consciousness because it really encapsulates everything that I'm trying to express. When I say knowledge, I don't mean y equals mx plus b. I mean the ability to understand, the ability to experience meaning. I said in my previous video that we are inside of some kind of meaning machine. All of this is meaning. The things that we coldly refer to as matter are actually some kind of meaning. The tree that's growing right outside of your apartment is just as sacred as the thoughts inside of your head. This is where the paradox lies, and your ability to integrate this paradox into your perspective is the key to you understanding what's going on here. But it's like a Chinese finger trap. If you just try to force and pry it open, it
It's
will
not how it
continue
works.
to not make sense. You will
So basically, to understanding and to understand all of this requires you to understand yourself and understand how you interpret everything that is being laid out to you in knowledge, in information. Because what he says makes sense to me. It might not make sense to you. What I say might make sense to you, or it might not. But there is somebody that it will make sense with. And that person in the comment section, shout out to you, can break it down even easier for you to be able to understand at a certain level. But even if you were to understand it at that level, you still need to find the understanding and meaning for yourself through the meditation, through therapy, through conversation, through your friendships, through however you get to express yourself, through your being, through your art, through your music, through working out, through going outside, through nature. The way you experience and understand life, you need to be able to understand and experience it for yourself on a very deep and meaningful way. And some people would say when God has a personal relationship with you, that's another way to interpret it. So when you have that personal relationship, this can help you understand more of the universe, more of the meaning of why it is that you are alive. Because sure, what's the point of living? There is no point. We make it for ourselves. That being said, how do you find a way to make a point for your life? Find it out.
be lost in samsara, going around in circles. And we have all heard this expressed so many times that it has become cliche, but some kind of way the outside world is our inner world. Outer space
Course.
is inner space.
Of
We are
course.
inside of the outside.
Of
And not
course.
in some psychological way. I'm
No,
not trying to
literally.
psychologize it. It isn't that reality is some kind of Rorschach reflecting back at you how you feel on the inside. No, I mean it in a very real way. Reality is a living metaphor, some kind of living symbol.
Yes.
It is representative of some kind of higher principle. You could say that it is a lower dimensional slice of some higher dimensional object or something like that, which is really just a modern way of saying as above, so below. Everything
Hermetics.
that we consider to be reality, these processes that we view unfolding are some kind of representation of what's occurring somewhere else. It is like if you read the book versus watching the movie, it is the same story, but they are able to incorporate different types of information. And the evidence of
It's
this
all
can be
about
clearly
perception.
seen whenever you examine the relationship between science and spirituality.
I would start writing all this stuff down, right? The way you perceive life. This is what I'm writing down. You don't have to, but you could copy this. The way you perceive life is only a fraction of life. Boom.
You don't think that it's a bit odd that science continually confirms many of our ancient intuitions,
Crazy
our
how that works.
spiritual hypotheses?
It's like we
you
already
mean to
knew.
tell me that you don't raise a single eyebrow at the fact that thousands of years ago,
It's crazy.
you can take Plato for simplicity's sake, that all of these years ago, before the invention of the telescope, simply by sitting down and thinking, someone can come to the conclusion that reality emerges from some kind of single incomprehensible point. And for us, thousands of years later, to confirm it essentially with science, you don't find that to be suspicious? You think it's just some kind of
Huh?
lucky guess? To call it a
A
coincidence
lucky
is
guess is
nothing
crazy,
short
bro.
of cope. You don't have to
That's
be
copium
special.
for sure.
Anyone who
It's
in
not
good
special.
faith sits down and tries to detangle all of this will come to this conclusion. It's the same way that if you throw a piece of iron shaving inside of a magnetic field, its behavior will ultimately fall in congruence with the field that it is within. The same principle applies to us. Our thinking naturally falls into congruence within this field of consciousness, this memory field, however you want to phrase it. I use this word spirituality sort of as an umbrella term. It includes philosophy.
There's a lot of
because
stuff in there.
philosophy used to be nearly indistinguishable from theology.
Of course.
Philosophy, theology, metaphysics, mysticism, I consider it all to be spirituality.
Of course.
And spirituality and science have this strange quarrel going on. It is like this weird union anima-animus complex that is playing out, or this left brain, right brain, bicameral mind type of situation that's going on. Science often scolds spirituality for being completely lacking.
Bro, the funny thing about this, bro, because it was revealed to me in a dream. What's the source? It's like a lot of people ignore their dreams, or some people, they claim they don't have dreams, or maybe they have a dream and then they forget about it later in the day. But that's why you got to write it down. Dreams are important. Where do you think dreams come from? Dreams are essential to you, who you are. It's another form of you whenever you have a dream. You can interpret it any way you want, but that dream is intrinsic to who you are, right? So, yeah, when it gets revealed in a dream, that's like, oh, poppycock for some intellectuals. But a lot of things in life came from somebody else's imagination anyway. Everything you enjoy in life comes from somebody else's imagination. And imagination is another form of dream. Dream, imagination, all of these things come from some other being. And then it's up to that individual, or that individual, to grab other people that can create these resources, build a team, right? If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. Somebody has to have the image. Somebody has to have the vision, right? There's a reason why a visionary is very important to team building. If you see somebody that can see the goal 500 meters away before anybody else can see the trees from the forest, no surprise. If you have that person in your group, you actually make it to the end destination that you didn't even know exist, because you couldn't see it. Somebody else could. Whenever you enjoy in life coming from somebody else, we all work together. We all work off of each other. And only ego, this I, there is no I. It's us. We're all together. We're all underneath one. Or that one can branch off into many others. And then it's up to you to believe whichever of those ones you want to believe. Some people think their one is stronger than every other one, but they're all together anyways, right? It's unnecessary, but for some people, it's the I, it's the ego, and we all have it. It's just something you have to understand for yourself, what your ego is. What does it do for you? Is it helping you, or is it actively sabotaging you, and you just don't realize it because you let it become so powerful? There's a lot of things in this world, my friends, and not all of it can just be explained with only logic and science. Logic only gets you so far, man. You need to have faith. If you don't have faith, that's part of the issue.
And evidence, when they fail to realize that they are the evidence. They are
Literally.
2 wings on the same bird. Science is spirituality with attention to a different set of details. And with all of that groundwork laid, we have finally reached the grand finale, the most important part of this video. You see, science confirms our spiritual hunches about the beginning, but they also confirm our spiritual revelations about the end. It's as I mentioned, everything that I hoped wasn't true is actually turning out to be so. From the scientific perspective, the story of the universe is the adventure of going from the state of lowest entropy into highest entropy. From the perspective of metaphysics, it is the adventure of complete order turning into total chaos. And it is here where the weird paradox lies that we are caught inside of. Order and chaos have this strange paradoxical relationship that is impossible for us to detangle. It's as I mentioned, we are inside of the outside. I always say in my videos that consciousness is ultimately turning inside out. If
When people say the universe is experiencing itself, this is what they're talking about. This is the universe experiencing itself through you, through me, through Tyrone, through this video in general, this reaction of this, breaking it down, writing it down, and then you write it down as well, and you formulate your own thoughts and your own opinions through each other, because we all work through each other. So when you start actually doing your part and you start working with the collective, that is the universe experiencing itself. That is everything working together in tandem to find universal truth.
If reality is some kind of living metaphor, then what lies at the end is a pun, some kind of punchline. And it all goes a little something like this. Time and information have this inverse relationship. If you have maximum time, then you have no information. This is kind of like when you are a baby, you have your entire life ahead of you, but you know nothing. And when you have maximum information, there is no time. This is like the moment before you expire, when you are this old person with all of this knowledge, but no time left to use it. This is what maximum entropy literally means. It is to have no more useful energy, or in other words, there is no information left to be processed. But the real paradox here is that even though entropy technically means that, there are less and less things happening. From our perspective, it appears as if more things are happening. A simple example of this is life itself. A lot of people like to argue that life is able to break the laws of thermodynamics because it's able to maintain order in the face of entropy. However, this isn't entirely true. The way that life gets around this is by reproduction, by multiplying. Whenever you see bacteria or cells exponentially multiplying, that is entropy in action. But from our perspective, it looks like more things are happening. It looks like more patterns, more connections and relationships. We even see this with the whole many worlds hypothesis. All of these different branching timelines, that is entropy. This situation would be something akin.
So I will write this down, which is what I'm doing. The world grows through entropy. And then you would break down what is entropy. And then you put entropy is pattern. So what does that mean? That means life is pattern, which, you know, we've already known and we've already said several times. So here at the bottom, entropy is pattern. And then you could put pattern is life. And then you could say, what is life? And then it goes back in a circle. It's a circle. It's infinite. That's what it is.
To more and more events occurring. It would be more things happening in a smaller unit of time. But this will ultimately mean that time is moving faster and faster because more and more things are happening. And I think that we all experience this. As you get older, the years just fly by. When you're a kid, an hour in after school detention felt like a prison sentence.
It did, bro.
When you're older, you can do that with your hands tied behind your back. Because time and intelligence have this inverse relationship. But it isn't like it's linear, it's exponential. The older that you get, the faster time appears to flow. And I don't think that this is coincidental. It's as I mentioned, memory is some kind of force akin to gravity. It is a pulling force. Memory is what makes knowledge possible, as I mentioned earlier. And this knowledge is accumulating. It is being sucked towards the attractor. It is being crunched down on top of each other.
And why is this? Tyrone made a video about this earlier, but spoiler alert, it's because knowledge exists everywhere. Knowledge exists everywhere. Knowledge exists everywhere. I say it 3 times because a lot of people think they know everything. People think they know absolutely everything. For all I know nothing. Socrates said this, and I truly believe this, and I try and embody this. So even though I have all this stuff like, oh yeah, this is what life is pattern, blah 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 blah, it is also subject to change. If new knowledge is found, or another version of knowledge is found, I look at this knowledge and I study this knowledge, and if it brings me back to where I started, okay, that's fine, but I still have another way to explain it. Like, imagine, how do you make a hamburger? There are many different hamburgers in this world. So if you just said lettuce, cheese, tomato, and protein, well, you're right, but that's also not fully correct, because there are more things you could add. There are different things you could add. You could take away a whole bunch of stuff. And some might just say, well, hamburgers don't exist, which would also be right. So that is the point I'm trying to get across. Everything is possible. Anything is possible. It is just all very subjective to your subjective perspective of a objective experience. You get me? I hope so.
And from
Somebody lit their room on fire. I hear a fire alarm going off.
From the other side of the coin, from the other perspective, from our perspective,
We're just over
it
here
looks
learning.
like
Somebody's
it's expanding.
struggling
It looks
over
like
there.
we are learning more, figuring more things out, but
Learning
we
more
are
of the
more
same
so
thing.
being buried. We are being sucked inside of something. And if outer space is inner space, we don't have to look very far to see our fate. Well,
Yep.
technically it is very far, but we see
Closer
within
than you
physics and astronomy the way that gravity works. Once gravity becomes so dense, you have enough mass that is restricted to this small enough space, something very odd happens. Things accumulate until there is a rupture of plane, and then everything goes dark. No one knows what happens after that. At least that's where the science
GG's,
ends
bro.
on the subject. But as I mentioned, many of our previous intuitions are only being confirmed
starts over
today
again.
with
That's the
modern day
joke.
techniques.
That's the joke, bro. It starts all over again. Everything starts over again, and we're back to here again.
And it leads me to believe that there may be all kinds of things still left on the table. The same people who are able to correctly intuit how this all began, they also foretold the way that it ends, and they all include this sort of rupture of plane at the end, this twist ending. And if you
Return
look
to
to the
God.
science, you don't even have to guess. We can clearly see this rupture of plane that lies at the end of time, at the entropic heat death of the universe. The only thing that will be left are black holes. However, this is so far in the future, people tend to not even think about it. But I
course.
think that
Why?
it
Why would
may
you
be
think about
closer
it?
than we all suspect.
Oh,
On
shit.
paper, it's some kind of ridiculous amount of years in the distant future, but in the perspective of some kind of observer, it may be closer than it appears. Sort of like when you were a child, you thought that you were going to live forever until you turned 50, and you see that the clock is ticking. Something is coming for you. It's
sure.
coming for all of us.
For sure.
But one thing that I have
But what is it?
become certain of is that it isn't what you think that it is. It isn't anything to fear at all.
Yeah, it's not scary.
Somehow going to
It's
sleep
amazing.
is the same thing as waking up.
Yes.
Forgetting and remembering are two sides of the same coin. They are almost like these quarreling brothers. There's that archetype again. But I have to end this video here, because if I don't,
Next, we talk
then
about
this
that.
video will be too long, and then my editing software will go crazy. However, this isn't the end
Adobe
of this
Premiere.
video. This consciousness turning inside out, this rupture of plane, isn't what you probably think that it is. And if you have the proper eyes to see, you can see that it unfolds in these stages. There are these stages, kind of like the stages of pregnancy or childbirth. And I think that this rupture of plane has something to do with the imagination. The imagination appears to literally connect all of the dots. So I'm going to record another video directly after this one and put it on the
Directly?
members platform so
Oh,
we can
members only.
discuss it further over there.
Damn.
Also on the locals platform, you can post, you can chat with me,
Restricting
and we can
knowledge
support each
behind
other on this
paywalls.
journey. So consider these avenues. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day.
Appreciate the video, Tyrone. That was absolutely Absolutely amazing. Let's go ahead and get some BGM. I'll talk for a little. I'll yap for a little bit. Yap for a little bit on what we learned and what we talked about. So that video was the fundamental force by ThirdEyeTyrone. Talked about vibration, polarity. So you can find this stuff in Hermetics. So a book I would recommend that is constantly getting recommended is the Kabbalion. I'll get a picture of it for you. So pick up this book if you're interested in learning more. This is the one that I have. It's this blue one. So I know people like they want like specific. So this one is the one that I got. This is Hermetic philosophy. It teaches you as above, so below. This is like one of the most well-known phrases. So as above, the things that are above us, the heavens, the clouds, the stars, the universe are the same thing as the things that are below us. The earth, the ground, the atoms, the particles, the molecules, the fundamentals of what is everything. As above, so below. It's the same stuff. It's all together. It's oneness, and this will teach you all of that and a whole lot more. There's more books and stuff like that, but this would be the one definitely to recommend for sure. I read through this book I think 3 times now. It's a nice book. I let my friend borrow it recently. Shout out to Seth. You're awesome, bro. So another resource to study, Plato's theory. The Kabbalion as well. The Kabbalion. The Tree of Kabbalah, right here. So here's the Tree of Kabbalah. You can find this in many esoterics that teach you from the Jewish interpretations of law, of the world, and Spinoza's ontology. I'll check that out for myself and see what that's about. Sounds fun. But yeah, legitimately, like all this knowledge, all this wisdom, how does it affect you? It literally affects your entire existence. You know, a lot of people think, oh, how's this gonna put food on my table? How's it gonna help me pay rent? That's small potatoes. Like, even though it's the big potatoes because you're in survival mode, bro, that's small potatoes because you're gonna die regardless. You're gonna die eventually, and you might just come back and experience it again, but experience it from a different perspective. But it takes you to grow your wisdom and grow your knowledge and grow your understanding to really put it into perspective for yourself. And you still got to pay them bills, for sure. You still got to pay that rent. That's not even a question. But again, through the many worlds and through all the stuff like this, you can find manifestation. You can find God. God can manifest stuff for you to be abundant. You just need to internalize it and find it for yourself first. And it's easier said than done, but it's something you'd have to do if you would love to live the life you say you would want to live. But that's all I got. That's all I'm going to share. We could talk about it more in the comments below, join the Discord or whatever. This was a cool video. I enjoy these types of videos. We'll go back to some more interesting things, more hee hee ha ha, more neurosama. Coming soon. I just needed to make this video for the ones that wanted to become more enlightened, because that's my dharma. I'm sharing my purpose with the world. So until next time, thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a good day. Adios.